Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, boys and girls, the reality is that sometimes those truly scary things in life come out of real life. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming you do, because you're listening right now, you can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. As the kids call it, we're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, and we are on the Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, as we head into 2022, when you're looking for something to watch, please come and pay us a visit where it all began, over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if it's something we like to write about and talk about, and we love it when you come and read about it, so please come on by. On this episode, we got a good one. We are looking at a new film, which is on video on demand now, called The Scary of 61st. And it is from writer-director Dasha Nekrasova, who we had the distinct pleasure of talking with about the film. And it's the story of two roommates' lives whose lives are upended after finding out that their new downtown Manhattan apartment has a dark secret to it. And without giving away too many spoilers, the dark secret is something that is actually playing out in the news right now, and something that has a lot of it has a lot of people anxious, and has a lot of people sort of experiencing this pain because there's a lot of bad people out there in the world who've done a lot of bad things, especially to women. And this is very much a female-driven film, and it's a really interesting film. But we talked with Dasha just about the origins of the story, and just how she shot it, and just sort of the vibe of it all. And I think we had a good talk. So I hope you enjoy it, because I know that I certainly did. Now, I guess my first question is just because obviously I love the film. I mean, honestly, it was a lot. I'll be blunt, it was more fucked up than I thought it was going to be. I absolutely loved it. Walk me through sort of the origin of the story.
Madeline Quinn, my co-writer, we were both really obsessed with the Epstein stuff. I was in the throes a little bit of like a manic episode, full disclosure. And we wanted to collaborate together for a long time. It originally we wanted to write just like a short film, because we really were feeling a lot of like fervor, but also futility around the Epstein stuff. And so we needed an outlet for it. And so we thought, like, let's make a short film that has the kind of the punchline that the film does. And then it got like longer and just more ambitious, and became, the feature length.
Which, I mean, again, it's a hell of a ride. And I mean, in watching it, it felt very much almost like a throwback in terms of like some of the horror that we would see come out of New York in like the 70s. But just in this instance, it was, moved uptown and sort of kept indoors as opposed to seeing it on the street. I'm kind of curious, how influenced were you by sort of those films in creating the vibe that you did with this film? Because it really felt very sort of specific and almost very, very New York in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, part of that is the 16 millimeter, I think, which was really important to me to shoot it on film. I think that gives it that kind of that quality, especially because the subject matter is so like hyper topical. I thought it really did it justice to work with like a finite medium. And I mean, it was influenced by like the Polanski apartment trilogy.
Right.
The Tenant in a big way, though. I'm not sure if that takes place in New York. Rosemary's Baby.
I think it does. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah.
Yeah. And then I think just sort of in the spirit, you know, of like independent New York filmmaking, all the like Abel Ferrara or something, it
Yeah.
has the momentum and stuff also lends to that feeling.
Now, I mean, obviously, this was your first feature, but you're in it as well. Like, was that always the plan for you to sort of do double duty in telling the story?
Yeah, because we wrote it sort of as a vehicle for me and Maddie. And the friendship between those two girls is so important. Um, and we just didn't have a lot of time and resources to do like an extensive casting process. I would have maybe loved to in retrospect, because it was really hard to act and direct in the same project actually for me. Um, especially with, you know, the limited time and money that we did have. So it was a practical decision, um, largely, but I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy with the performances in the film.
Any positives or negatives that you can maybe pull from like sort of wearing dual hats on something like this? I've got to imagine that just it's
I mean,
burning the candle at both ends.
yeah, it took a lot out of me. I mean, in the last act where my character is sort of hysterical, you know, it was really challenging, yeah, to be in that state, to be, you know, so upset, and managing a set. Uh, the fight scene with me and Noelle's character,
Yeah.
I guess small spoiler, but I mean, I hit my head twice.
Oh, ouch.
Once on the camera and once like pretty hard. Like I thought I had like brain damage, you know, and I had to continue, you know, it's like there's not going to be another day where we, you know, reshoot this scene. So you have to kind of like keep moving through it. Yeah.
It's the pound of flesh you pay for independent filmmaking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I mean, I'm kind of curious. Has directing always been something that you looked at or aspired toward, or was this just a story that kind of sort of grew in your own mind and you decided you had to tell it?
I think I had vague directing ambitions. I certainly wasn't in any rush, I guess, to get behind the camera. But I had worked on a lot of like indie films and short films and stuff that was made, you know, very collaboratively. So I had been on a lot of like on a lot of sets, and had a sense that intuitively I would sort of know maybe how to do it. And yeah, and then this story in particular was just one that I really felt like I felt a, you know, a real pull to make it.
Now, I mean, in this, while you're obviously pulling from things that have and are obviously still going on, there is a real sense of horror to it, not just literally, but I mean psychologically as well. And I mean, I'm curious from your perspective, what is it about the horror genre that allows for so much wiggle room? Because I mean, if you tried to do this as a drama or something else, it may not have worked. Like you have to sort of play inside that genre to really be able to sort of go the places you want to.
Totally, yeah. That's a great point, and that's something, yeah, that I really what I like about genre, what I've always liked about genre is, yeah, is that freedom, um, because it's by nature transgressive. It's, you know, you take for granted that you are dealing with material that is going to be horrifying, you know, and it has so many conventions that I find just really fun to kind of like play with. And I don't know. Yeah.
Now, from your perspective, I've got to ask, what is it about New York as a city that lends itself to be such a character across a broad swath of films? Because it feels like if, you know, had this been set in Seattle, it would have been a different movie. You know what I mean? It feels like it had to be New York.
Well, Epstein's very connected to New York. That's,
Yeah.
You know, he had a townhouse here. He was very involved in real estate. The movie is also sort of about the totality and evil of wealth, which New York has.
Centers in New York, yeah.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, there's just a lot of things energetically in New York that for this film in particular, you know, made a lot of sense. And besides that, I think it's a cinematic city. It's very easy, not very easy, but like, you know, there's a legacy of indie filmmaking in New York. And it's one of the best places to make movies, I think.
For sure. Now, this is a dumb question, but I mean, it's one I always like to ask. Can you think back to sort of your younger days? And I mean, I always like to hear about the movies or sort of moments in a performer or an artist's life that sort of got them into the business? Like, what was sort of that inspirational sort of light switch, movie or performance that you saw that made you want to start to get into this?
God, that's a good question. I mean, Ghost World is a big
Nice.
influence on our film. As are the movies of like Todd Solondz, actually. I think like in its like tone and humor.
Totally, yeah.
And those, I mean, I've always really liked genre too. I remember being like maybe 12 or 13 and really badly wanting to go see House of a Thousand Corpses, that Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah.
And my parents forbidding me. And even when I was younger, when they re-released The Exorcist, they like remastered it.
Right.
I was in a movie theater for another film and they showed a trailer for it where they showed just for a brief second that shot of Linda Blair walking down the stairs like in a vacuum. And that really just blew my mind. And I wanted to see The Exorcist so badly and also was not allowed to. I think maybe, yeah, and I think maybe that's why I'm also drawn, I think, to transgressive filmmaking is having it been like prohibited for to me as when I was younger, maybe.
Well, and I mean that's the irony because I mean those styles that are maybe forbidden from us, during our younger years, when you really get into the genre and get into the community, they're actually the most inviting. And I mean, I'm curious, like, how has your experience been sort of dipping a toe into the horror world, which is about to open up even broader for you now? Because I can imagine it's an interesting experience.
Well, I mean, I haven't had a lot of opportunities to watch the movie with audiences, and though it played at Beyond, which is like nominally kind of a genre fest, and like a couple other genre festivals I didn't get to go, or they were remote, or like the pandemic made it.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to be more, to be less alienated from the horror community. But I mean, my film will be on Shudder in the spring, and I've been a Shudder subscriber for a long time. I've always, like really liked horror movies.
So, I mean, that begs the question: are you the actor who directs, or are you a director who acts? Now that you've been through the experience,
I guess I see myself more as an actor who directs. But maybe I would use the moniker like filmmaker more broadly.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Like I'm interested in filmmaking. I'm interested in acting. When I can be of service, like a story that I want to tell, and I'm interested in directing when I feel like I have to.
So have to or want to? Like where does one draw the line? Like how do you do you want to develop other stories, or is it just a question of when something strikes you, let's try and go get this done?
No, I have another movie that I want to make that is a script that I've been working on off and on for a few years actually. It's called Total War. It's also a genre film, but it's set in the aftermath of the American Civil War. It's a period piece. And it was always like something that I was obsessed with aesthetically, conceptually. And when Scary started to get traction, I was like, oh, maybe I could get Total War made. So that's what I'm trying to do now. But I think it will be, I hope it's a longer pre-production process, because I don't want to, the way that I made Scary was so fast, which in retrospect was a very good thing because we shot it in January of 2020. And then in February, it was like the city was locked down essentially. Right. So I wouldn't have been able to make it if I hadn't made it so quickly. But I'd like to just work to have some more, a little bit more resources and a little bit more space and a little bit more time to make something a little more diligently.
No, I definitely agree with that. But I mean, at the same time, there is, at least from my perspective, there's a certain value in just getting out there and doing it. And I mean, I think well,
especially for a first feature, I don't think you don't get to be precious about it. You have to kind of just
tear off the Band-Aid and go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would make if there was something, and that the movie is about mania. The movie has this like momentum, and that comes across in the way that it was made, and like if there was another movie that I felt I could make quickly or that would benefit from being made with that kind of sustained energy, then I would do it. Yeah.
Well, you know what, though? Thank you for bringing the scary and thank you for bringing the mania because, I mean, I was gripped from minute one, and it really is one of those movies that, at least for me as a genre fan and a horror fan, I've
Yeah.
always appreciated stuff that was pulled from reality as much as humanly possible. And because obviously you're going off of a lot of the stuff that happened with the Epstein thing and still is going on, it felt very insidious and very creepy and truly upsetting. And I absolutely loved it.
Good. I'm glad. Thank
But
you.
but thanks again for the time today, Dasha. This was fun.
Thank you so much, David. Nice to meet you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.